I've been doing video games for quite a while now. I haven't done a ton. There are certainly people who do more games than I do. I've been fortunate enough to work on some really good ones. The Jack and Daxter series, Final Fantasy 12, Metal Gear Solid 2 and 4. Yeah. And a bunch of stuff. Diablo 3, Darksiders, Infamous, Mercenaries. And they've all been, the good games have all been relatively similar experiences. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the process at all. It's a very long process. They spend years developing the games, and the script for a movie, a feature film, will be about that thing. The script for a video game will be about that thing.
Wow.
The major difference from the perspective of a voice actor is just that. It's the sheer volume. When you do a half-hour animated show, you're doing that. You're at most recording 24 minutes worth of dialogue. For a video game, your dialogue has to cover a minimum of probably 5 hours of gameplay. Now, granted, the characters in most video games don't talk as much as the characters in most cartoons, but they also die a lot. And so you spend a lot of time doing that. I should probably just open the floor to questions and then fill in with anecdotes and information as we go. Yes, sir.
Would you say that...
You didn't really have a question, did you? You just wanted to raise your hand first.
I answer the first one! Would you say that your role, or even the average role of for a video game character pays more than the average role of a cartoon character or movie character? Is it different at all?
Pays more? No. On average, they pay the same. There is a union scale rate, which is the minimum that they can, officially pay you. It's about $800 for a single recording session, and most jobs pay that. Cartoon jobs, video game jobs, they pay that scale rate. And again, like we said, they pay the same for a script that big and for a script that big. And also, one big difference is if you're doing a half-hour cartoon, a lot of times you're recording with the entire cast. When I worked on Samurai Jack or Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, there were several of us in there, all recording our lines for 4 hours. When I go in for a video game, it's just me for 4 hours. And that's, a considerably larger amount of work. But yes, they do. Although, let me go back with, once a game is successful, or if they just really, really want you for a character, at times it can be negotiated to a higher rate. And usually for cartoons, that's not the case. They'll just find somebody who's sound. Yes, sir.
Hi, recent Penny Arcade Expo is going on right now. It just announced the Metal Gear game. Do you know if you're being cast in for that?
Oh, the new Metal Gear Rising?
kind of transition is it for a game like Metal Gear Solid, where you voice human characters, as opposed to a game like Darksiders, where you voice a demon?
The question was, what's the transition? What's the difference between voicing human characters, Metal Gear, versus demon characters in Darksiders? The biggest difference actually doesn't have to do with the characters as much as the tone of the game. Metal Gear is a relatively realistic game. The characters' emotions are on a human scale, you know, and in fact, in a lot of ways, very subdued, you know. Darksiders, certainly the character I was playing, was much more of a heightened, almost, you might even say, cartoony character, you know. So I think that's part of the difference. You would be hard-pressed in a modern-day, you know, video game to have human characters who are all like, you know, quite human. I don't think people, would that be weird to you?
Yeah.
You know, so I think these days, I think you can only get away with that with non-human characters. But even then, you know, something like Mass Effect, you've got a ton of alien characters, but again, it's tamped down, it's realistic, it's dramatic. And as Volgrim in Darksiders, I did not have to be dramatic. You know, I was weaselly, you know, not quite villain, but certainly not trustworthy. I have something you would be interested in. You know. And the great thing about doing the demons is you get to play with all sorts of weird, creepy textures like that. But, yes.
I noticed that your natural voice doesn't sound like Vamp from the Metal Gear Solid series. So what made you go? I wanted to know what made you go with that kind of voice for Vamp.
When they described the character to me, that he was not really a vampire, but kind of not really alive, my thought was, he's not really alive, maybe he's not really breathing. And what would be the sound of someone who doesn't necessarily need to breathe? So the voice was, for me, an attempt to sort of take as much of the air out of it and just sort of make it sound as cold and dead. You know, so it was basically trying to be as creepy as possible. Although it was interesting when we came back to Metal Gear 4, because he was a very different character. You know, I mean, I think losing the trench coat really just changed things. But he was a more emotional. You know, he was tortured. Will you be the one to kill me? You know, there was a little more life, but still creepy and weirdly sexual. Yes.
For somebody who has no acting experience or acting history or like any training or anything, or anything on their resume basically involving acting, how does one interested in voice acting pursue that?
Learn to act.
Learn to act?
Well, as someone who has no medical training, how do I perform surgery? You don't. You learn how to do it.
Okay.
It's funny because I think people look at voice acting like, well, you get paid the jobs. You know, I don't know all that. I don't know all that. I don't know the phone. Somebody pay me.
Okay, what's the check?
But the thing is, there is a weird skill to it. I remember years ago on Justice League, the producers would bring in very, very good on-camera actors to do guest voices on the series. And there would be times when there would be people who you would see be amazing in a movie or a television show, and they got in there and they're like, Jesus, this guy can't sound like you're reading. Because the thing is, by and large, you don't memorize it. And it's different. When you memorize a speech, you can memorize how to say it and make it sound the way you want to. But most of the time in a voiceover context, you're getting pages perhaps for the first time, or certainly you don't have time to familiarize yourself with them, and you're reading them while they're recording it. And we all know how we sound when we read. Like, oh, listen to what your mother said. Having a good time, there's something about reading that automatically flattens out what you're doing and how you're saying it, and you have to get that out of your system. And I've found, and I think most of the people that I work with found, the best way to do that is acting training. Figure out the way to take those words and make them speech rather than reading. So yeah, that's whenever I tell anybody what to do, how to get started with voice acting, we say learn to act. But nowadays I also say, and I'll say this to anybody who's interested in finding out about voice acting or anything, there is a website that my friend D. Bradley Baker, who's a phenomenally talented voice actor, put up called iwanttobeavoiceactor.com. And it's basically the answers he's given over the years to people every time they've come up to him and said that. And he's put them all down on this webpage, and it's an invaluable resource. It will answer so many questions that you have. All right. Yes.
What is your favorite character to voice act for, or one of your favorites?
It's impossible to say. I think I said this the other day. It was that now, but if I were to record all of my roles like in 1 week, at the same time, then maybe I could say, oh, what I did on Monday, doing Green Lantern on Monday was much better than doing Chris from Mercenaries on Tuesday. But the thing is, they all came at different times in my life and with different experiences with different people, so it's impossible to actually compare them and say which one is better or more favorite than anything else. Yes.
Does it help when you're voice acting to act out what the characters are doing? Like, if they're frustrated, do you make motions that you would make when you were frustrated, like rolling your eyes?
It can help. It can help you performance-wise, but it can hurt you recording-wise.
Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Oh, sorry. The question was, does it help to act out physically what you're trying to embody vocally? And sort of. The problem is, you can't move your head because your mouth has to stay in the same proximity to the microphone the whole time. Because the engineer's just going to go, cut. Why don't we try it again? And it's actually been not a problem, but a challenge. Because when I first started doing games, I dreamed of a time, someday I can get good enough where I can do a punch sound without actually having to go, and I dreamed that someday after I do this enough, I'll just be able to go, no! And the thing is, if you don't do some kind of indication, some kind of movement, you feel like you're not doing it right. It doesn't feel like it sounds right. Okay, you get kicked in the face. Well, that's different from getting kicked in the side. Unless I move my body, I can't tell. Okay, that's getting kicked in the side. But there are things that you can do and have to do. For instance, you can't sound like you're smiling unless you're smiling. And there's some weird thing about the human mouth that you can actually hear when someone's smiling. It sounds completely different. You hear the teeth, you hear the way the lips are. It doesn't sound the same as when someone's not smiling. So sometimes if somebody says, we need it to sound a little more friendly,
Do you actually play the games that you voice act in, or watch anything that you voice act in?
I try to play most of the games. I'm partial to, you know, certain of the games, and then I buy games that I'm not in, which is sometimes annoying. Like, oh man, I wish I was in Arkham Asylum.
Well, I know some actors don't like to watch themselves on screen, so do you actually like play the games that you're in? You know what I mean?
I don't think, in video games, I don't think that self-consciousness. He's asking, you know, do I play the games that I voice? There's much less of that kind of self-conscious thing in voiceover, because you're not actually the character. You're 1/30th of the character. Or not, sorry, 1/3 of the character. Because there's the voice, there's the writing, there's the animation in equal parts. No one of those three can stand without the other two. So, yeah, I think it's much easier to take in a voice performance than an on-camera performance. Because, you see your zits and that sort of thing. Yes, sir.
Would it be possible to get a voice, like a game acting job or something
Without going to classes? It's possible.
What was the question?
The question was, is it possible to get a voice acting job without going to classes? It's possible, unlikely, and more importantly, you probably won't get another one unless you have, because the big thing about acting is not to be able to be funny or to be sad or to be, exciting or whatever. People can do that. People do that in your life all the time. The trick is being able to do it over and over while standing in the right light or in the right spot every time they need you to do it, and without moving off mic, And having a class or some kind of way that you practice gets you the skills you need to be able to do it when you need to do it and over again in a way that, they want you to. I mean, the trickiest thing is someone will have you do a character, and you'll practice the character, you'll have scripts, This is, Colonel Timmons. I'm Colonel Timmons. I'm Colonel Timmons of the USAF. That's right. And you practice it, you go in, and you're like, all right. I say, okay, record it. This is Colonel Timmons of the USAF. You know what? We decided to make the Colonel younger and sexier. But you just practiced it for like 3 days, like this. Okay. I'm young and sexy. You have to be able to change your performance to give, because it's not about what you want and what you think the character is, it's about what the guy with the checkbook wants and thinks the character is. And if he decides that Colonel Timmons is young and sexy, then you've got to be Colonel Timmons, USA. Any other questions?
When did you start? How old are you now?
What's that?
When did you start? How old are you now?
When did I start? I'm 45. I started doing games. No way. I don't know, really 2000s? Yeah, so maybe off and on over the last 10 years. Yes, sir.
So I have a question for that. Did you start with animation or gaming first?
Animation. Because there was animation first. When I started, there wasn't gaming. are differences in acquiring jobs. Well, in Los Angeles, where I'm based, there are fewer and fewer differences. It used to be that video games were created by completely different companies than animation and television on-camera shows. And they still are largely, you know, EA doesn't make any sitcoms or, you know, cartoons. Whereas, you know, NBC or Universal will make both of those type of things. They make a few games, or they, I guess, you know, they used to have an arm that made video games, and made such wonderful pieces that I worked on, like 50 Cent Bulletproof, which is about the worst game I've ever played. Like, I did a voice on this thing, I'm like, oh, they sent me a copy, I'm like, oh, I want to play, let me play my character. And I started playing the game, and this is the game that started the rap with 50 Cent, and I couldn't figure out how to get the game mechanics were so bad, I couldn't get through a door. You know, like, let's just get my character beat. I couldn't figure out how to shoot. It's not a game. You should be able to do anything you do should be able to make a gun go off. You know, and I think I talked to the guys who were producing it, and it was pretty apparent even before the game came out that, like, yeah, you know, he's got this movie coming out, and the game's got to come out when the movie comes out. Oh, are you guys ready? The game's got to come out when the movie comes out. You know, and it's very weird. I mean, it's a completely different process. They have to build these games using all, you know, the rendering and the voices and the, you know, everything has to go together. Then they have to, you know, debug it. They have to figure out how it works, doesn't work. Does the engine do what we want it to do? We're programming things, we're creating things. It's completely different from making movies or animation. The process is set. You know, people, they're making movies now the same way they made The Great Train Robbery in 1926. You know, camera film, you know, it's the same thing. With video games, every time there's, you know, a new gen console, they're reinventing the wheel, or at least reinventing the way they have to render the wheel. You know, this way.
Regarding your work on Metal Gear Solid, Hideo Kojima is known for, you know, having a pretty specific vision. Did you get to meet him during recording or anything like that?
The question was, during Metal Gear, did we get to meet Mr. Kojima? I did not get to meet him. I believe there was a session that we were recording where he came in, because he was over visiting from Japan. But, you know, a voiceover session is not the most exciting thing in the world when you understand what they're saying. So I can't imagine what it was like if you're a native Japanese speaker and there's all these guys. There's no pictures. There's just people sitting there in front of a microphone talking, and you don't understand what they're saying. Like, hey, okay, I can go. You know? So he did not stick around. Yes.
Just in relation to video games per se, but talking about acting, I noticed that in Pulp Fiction, when you were in that small role in the backseat, whatever, how did you get that role? You know?
I had a part of Marvin in Pulp Fiction, a guy who gets his brains blown out the back of the car. That was a combination of a standard audition process and happenstance. I had met Quentin Tarantino through the actress Julia Sweeney. Julia and I were both members of a comedy troupe in Los Angeles called The Groundlings, and I met him through that. And when he was casting, he thought of me to come in to audition for the role. So that was a little bit of who you know. Yes. the worst one was a Terminator 2 video game where I just had to be a dying cop for half an hour at a time and then lost my voice completely. Because, you know, the Terminator, if you're a character in the Terminator game, odds are you're going to die horribly in many ways. And I'm not even sure I had any dialogue. I think they had to stop, freeze! Like, okay, that was great. Now, we're just going to bring in a few pages of sounds. Just need a few sounds. Okay, let's start out with some getting stepped on. And then we'll save the play for the electrocution to last. That was not fun. No. There are a lot more actors than there are parts. So, by and large, what happens is a person who invents a video game will make a list of all the characters that they need actors for, and then they will send that out to the agents. The agents are the middlemen. They will go down the list of characters, like, okay, there's a Russian colonel, there's a sexy female spy, there's an early mercenary, and then they will go through the list of actors that they represent and pick people who would be good for each of these roles. And then they'll have them audition and send that audition to the producer. The producer will listen to all of the actors and then pick the voice that they think is best. Yes, sir.
On the website, the voice acting, does it like say studio because any voice actors are not sure of that?
It doesn't, because the studios and producers, the people who are making games, the last thing they want is a bunch of actors standing right outside their door saying, "Hi, come in game, please." So what they do is they wait until they have a specific project, you know, a game, and then they go to, that's why they go to agents instead of going to actors, you know, directly. Because actors are cowardly, that's what people know this. They want to streamline, because the thing is, there will be people who think they can do a role who really can't. And it takes just as much time to listen to a bad audition as it does to a good one. The idea of going to an agent is to narrow down the process. So as a producer, you know, I have a certain amount of time to get my actors. I don't want to waste time listening to people, you know, you don't want to hear me read for the sexy female spy. No matter how good I think my sexy female spy voice is, that's a waste of that person's time. And the agent will not send me in as the sexy female spy because then their name gets crossed off the list. The next time that producer's looking, it's like, okay, if you send me people who are bad, I will not ask you again. So the agent makes sure that they send their best people in, because then the agent has the best chance of getting the money.
I have a speech impediment. Would that hurt chances of becoming a voice actor at all?
Yes. The question is, if you have a speech impediment, will that hurt your chances? It will not eliminate them. Mostly what it means is that you will have to find a way to manage the way you speak, which is the job of a voice actor. The job of a voice actor is to be in control of the way you speak. Although, if you stop and listen to radio ads and that stuff, you'll be surprised how many times you hear somebody say like that, or something that's not perfect speech. The performance is more important than the sound, you know. And if, for instance, you have a list of something, there are ways to train yourself to minimize it. If you can minimize it enough and perform well enough, you know,
Yeah.
Getting louder and louder. What's going on with it anyway? Oh, it's
Going on again about speech impediments, stuttering, that kind of thing that some people do have. Obviously there are actors who have overcome it, like Rowan Atkinson, for instance, who actually does have a stutter, but you never see it in any of his film work unless he intends for it to come through.
Who's that?
Rowan Atkinson, Mr. Bean. He actually has a very serious stutter, and you'll hear it when he does interviews, but when he does screen work, you never hear it, you never see it unless it's part of the character. What would you say in comment to people like that who have really overcome something that is a heck of a barrier?
The question was, what would I say to people who have speech impediments, like say Rowan Atkinson or James Earl Jones who have stutters, and that they've been able to overcome that very, very strong into their careers. I'm not, like I said to him, it lowers your chances. It does not limit it. It just means you have to work hard.
Right.
And also, you have to analyze, anytime you're a performer, you have to analyze your assets and your liabilities. You know, if it's your height, if it's your hair color, if it's the way you speak, if it's your accent, you know, whatever it is. There are tons of actors who are dyslexic. You know, they figure out ways to learn their scripts. And the case of stutterers, from what I understand, there are a lot of people who stutter when speaking extemporaneously. But if they have prepared words, they have memorized words, they don't. But again, that's not something I know a ton about. Is everybody enjoying the music?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Fine.
What about whenever it comes to like words that just aren't in the English language? Like, let's say like when we're about Fantasy 12 and they would say like a city name that was just from something different.
Hello, can you hear me? Speaking strange words like alien languages or just words you don't know, you gotta think. I worked on The Old Republic, and that was full of Star Wars names of people, cities, and you know. And the hardest thing about that was saying it the same way twice. Like, is it coruscant or coruscant? And, you know, most of the time the producers with them, they actually had a CD with the verbal dictionary of the Star Wars world. Like, everywhere it's like, okay, it's got on with it. Not Adam today. Okay, get on with it. And as an actor, your job is to then make it sound like it's your word. You know, if I have a strange thing, I usually have to write it down, say it off mic a couple of times, till it gets, you know, till it fits in my mouth. Because that's the thing, you can't suddenly be talking and say, Kalopoma, and have it drop out and be unnatural like that, because the character has been saying that all his life. So you have to think.
I know that there have been multiple, I don't know, big games or shows that you've done where you've done multiple characters. Do you happen to remember what roles or roles you've had in what shows or games that you've had the most character roles?
That's a good question. I know in Jack and Daxter, I did Sig and Count V'ger, and I think one other.
Blitz.
Oh, GT Blitz. And that was in combat racing. So that one was, I think, Sig The union contracts are set up so that the union scale at base rate pays for one voice. They can give a second voice for an additional 10%, and a third voice for another 10%. So, 140% of scale, you get 3 voices. If you want a 4th voice, it doubles. It goes to 200%. So usually most producers are like, nah, I don't need that one more voice that bad. We'll just save that 60% and put it towards the 120% for the next guy. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. They can pay me 200% for 4 voices, or pay 2 of us, 240% of scale for 6. So usually you won't do more than 3, except for the Old Republic, which I think, because it was such a massive, massive game. You guys are familiar with that game? It's basically...
Yes.
No, not KOTR. Not KOTOR. That was the video game. There was like basically a World of Warcraft type game set in the Star Wars world called the Old Republic. And because it's that big a world, I think I would wind up doing 6 different characters throughout that over a number of like 3 years.
How do you remember all of the different changes?
I don't. Especially if you record something and then come back a year later. It's like, I hope y'all recorded the last one and kept it, because I don't remember what the heck I did. Yeah, they play it back for you, and you go, oh, that was me. Okay, weird. And then you imitate yourself. Yes.
Talking about pay and stuff, I know you said that pay is pretty much the same whether it's a small script or a huge script. Does that turn you away from bigger scripts ever? Like you don't want to do that?
Well, I don't do as many video games as I do animated shows because of that. It is much, much more work. Usually, I will usually only do a video game if it's a significant part. And then you try to negotiate, like, okay, well, money is the best one, man. You can get a little bit more money. Come on. Or sometimes if you know it's going to be a big character and you'll be there many days, like, okay, well, that will add up to a significant amount of money. That might be worth it. Or if it's one day and I don't have to get electrocuted. That's always a big selling point for me because I'm very lazy.
And going also about the pay as well, is voice acting a pretty good paying job, or do you have to work on the side as well?
Is voice acting a good paying job, or do you have to work? Individual voice jobs pay much less than the average on-camera job. But, like, if I were to work on a cartoon or a video game tomorrow, I would get paid like somewhere around $800. If I were to work on a Big Bang Theory, I would probably work 5 days for 30 or somewhere around $3,000. But that would take 5 days of sitting there. So per day, you end up making less. And also, if I do the video game, that's going to take me half a day. I can do 2, maybe sometimes even 3 jobs in one day. And then, probably a couple more the other 4 days of the week. So, what you lose in initial pay, whatever, you make up for in volume.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
On the subject of union and voice acting, how is it different working for a company like Lamarr Software that's not union? Like, how does it affect like pay and how does it affect Okay, and then you can't take credit for a non-union job. How would it affect you if you were to take credit?
Well, alright, I'm just talking about my rear end a little bit, because I don't actually know. I've never worked any non-union jobs. I've been in the Screen Actors Guild since I was 16. So, I don't know. What I have been told is the reason some union actors who work non-union jobs will not take credit is because you can be punished by the union for working a non-union job. That's actually like rule 1 of joining a union. You know, like Fight Club, rule 1 of Fight Club. I'm talking about Fight Club. Rule 1 of the union, you don't do non-union. Because it undermines the purpose of the union. It's like, all right, we got this factory union, and everybody's going to get paid the same. And one guy goes, I'll do it for half. They go, why are we paying all these other guys? Why the class? Let's just get a whole bunch of them. So you won't get credit because you could be penalized by the union. Although
usually you'll pinpoint like who it is, though. Like if the word gets out, like so and so doing the voice for this character, can they still get punished and how they weren't credited for it? Or
the thing is, if the union had that much time and money, then no one would need to work on union, because they would be around enforcing against producers rather than enforcing stuff against actors. Nobody has the manpower to go through shows and listen to voices and identify, enemies of the state. They just don't. It's much easier to just make things better. Because the thing is, if you work a non-union job, you get paid $200 one time for 8 hours of work, and none of it will go toward a pension plan. But if you work a union job, you get $800 for 4 hours of work. Plus, the producers have to contribute to money that you will get when you can no longer work. So, in the long term, it benefits us so much more to turn down a non-union job and make that producer think, I can't get anybody good unless I put in this money. And I mean, it's funny, because video games used to be all non-union. I remember playing Resident Evil 2, and the voice acting was horrible. Look, no, they're coming through! Run! And it was so bad that it actually hurt the game experience. And as the games got better and the visuals became more and more amazing, you couldn't have the guy in rendering come down and do it. You got a deep voice, don't do this. It just didn't work anymore. Because you had the voices working against these amazing visuals. And that's when they started using union actors, because they needed people who were better actors. And they knew who were better actors. And it doesn't necessarily mean that someone who's not in the union is not a great actor. But percentage-wise, if you're a producer and you only have a certain amount of time, if you go to a bunch of people who are seasoned, union actors, odds are they're going to be able to do the job more likely than if you get a bunch of guys off the street.
I noticed you're going to be in the documentary, I Know That Voice. Did you get...
I had no choice. John DiMaggio, one of my co-workers on Futurama, is producing a documentary called I Know That Voice, about the people in the voiceover, in the industry of voiceover. And John is much bigger than me, so when he asked me to be there, I had to say yes. What was your question?
I was just asking your general thoughts on that.
No, I'm actually very, very excited about it. There's also a podcast by a voice actor named Rob Paulson called Talkin' Tunes. And Rob is he's one of the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. He was Pinky in the Brain, one of the Animaniacs. He's just an enormously talented guy. And he sits down with people in the voiceover industry and just chats. And it's always fascinating. You learn how people make the easiest or hardest was to prepare for? I don't know. I would say easiest might have been Sig. Maybe, yeah.
Resistance. This is a pretty easy place for me to come to. I'm here. He's just having a good time. All right, Sheriff. Let's get us some metal here.
Hardest. I don't know if I like it out. Vamp was challenging, but maybe Vamp might have been the hardest. Just keeping it in this place. Yeah, probably the action sequences with Vamp were the hardest because you had to make it active and threatening, but still so restrained and sexy. Didn't ask a question. Yes, who's that?
What's been your most memorable experience?
Most memorable experience in the career? I forgot. That's a good one. I don't know. The thing is, it's tough because it's always an individual experience, and I find that most of my most memorable experiences have to do with who I'm working with. And video game voicing is such a solitary endeavor that it's hard for each experience to stand out. It's like, okay, there was the time I was in front of a microphone by myself in a room, and then there was the time I was by myself in a room in front of a microphone. I'm trying to think who I've gotten to work with. It might have been Metal Gear 2, just because it was a game that I was really excited to be a part of because I played the first game. I was just like so jazzed to be there. And it was a really exciting time. You know, I met David Hayter, and David was like, you know, had just come back from like working his way from being a PA to a writer on the first X-Men movie. And I'm like, what? Dude, you're writing movies, but you're also Snake? Wait, what? You know, and we actually, in that first session, I remember, we recorded as a group. And it was really amazing because they didn't have animation for us. For some reason, they didn't have the animation. What they had was a screen. Have you ever seen those, like, voice wave things? Like when someone's recording? You know, and it's like, oh, it goes up and it goes down. And then I stop talking. They had that of the Japanese voice track. And they said, okay, see where the cursor is? When it gets to the uppy downsy part, you have to talk. And then when it's done, you have to stop. Wait, what? Yeah, because the lines have to be the exact same length as the Japanese lines. So you would have English words that were not necessarily... The guy translating, he wasn't worried about how long it was. He was just typing what it was going to be. It's like, okay, so I have to say this while watching this thing go across. And, you know, so you're saying, well, my queen. Wait, we get it. You know, it was going so fast. You had to figure out how to act, read, watch, and, you know, make it all sound like you're not doing all those things at the same time. But there were a group of us there, and Paul Hagen and, you know, everybody, and it was actually fun to share that jump with other people. So that was exciting. It was memorable. It's actually one of the right ones. Yes, any more? Any more questions? Yes.
What's been your either most enjoyable or most challenging between dubbing anime, live performance, or video? So I mean, I said that when you reference the moving line and things like that, that sounds particularly challenging. Was that in
Yeah. If you could work on any popular like video game series or any upcoming games, what would you love to work on?
What would I love to work on any upcoming?
Or just any long-running series.
You know what? It's impossible to say. I said this in an earlier panel. People ask me, like, what's your favorite thing to do? You know, video games or movies or animated shows or on-camera stuff. And it has nothing to do with the form. It has everything to do with the quality. You know, and I can't look at a game that already exists and say that the sequel will be just as good. Although, you know, sometimes like Metal Gear, it turns out that.
I mean, are you like a really big fan of something that you would love to work on someday?
Yeah. I'm a really big fan of something that I love to work on. Yes, I'm a huge fan of Batman. I'm just waiting for them to get to the 70s so they can have black people. Are we out of time? Anybody have one last question? That I can answer really loudly? How do you make yourself stand out as a performer? Be yourself. And it's a weird, silly thing, but ultimately it comes back around to that. The only way to make yourself stand out is to be unique. And really the only thing that's unique about any of us is ourselves and our own